Thank you. All right. Good morning. All right, let's start. So today we're going to talk about lipoprotein metabolism. Lipoproteins are transport mechanism of lipids, fat. So it turns out we have different ways to get fat, either through diet. I mean, not fat physically, but the fat as a chemical. All right. So triacylglycerol, cholesterol, and all those lipids. You get them through your diet, or you can synthesize the triacylglycerol or even the cholesterol. Now, after they get synthesized or you eat them in your food, you have to be able to transport them to different tissues where they are needed. But also, after they get utilized, you need to do the cleanup, pick up the cholesterol, for instance, the free cholesterol that come from those hormones that are being utilized and now not needed. You have to get rid of them. So we're going to talk about all those cleanup mechanisms today, okay? So it's going to be three main lines. So the first one here is the transport system itself. Now, this is the case. A 21-year-old girl presented to the clinic for annual checkup, and 10 hours after her last meal, her blood specimen was taken and was analyzed for lipid profile. And these are the results. It turns out, I'm sure you're going to get, if you already didn't get it, the range of all the normal range for all those parameters. And then when you go outside of that, below up, either you over the limit or below the limits. But in any case, it turns out the LDL cholesterol was out of limit, 356 milligram per deciliter, in his blood sample, which is above the normal level of the LDL. Okay. So the person will further analysis or conducted a genetic analysis, biochemical analysis. It was defined that the person has a familial hypercholesterolemia type 2A. Okay, basically, the circulating blood LDL level is high, as you see here, the LDL above the. And I always say this: people call cholesterol, level in your blood. They talk about those lipoproteins. It's different from the cholesterol as a chemical cholesterol that we have seen before. So the questions remain: what might be the molecular basis of this disorder? So what causes this person to have a higher level of LDL cholesterol in his blood? Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about. So now, before we get to the answer, we're going to talk about all the lipoproteins, what they do and so forth, the degradation. Now we're going to get to the case, and then we're going to answer to that, okay? So the lipoproteins in general are transport mechanism or lipids. So you have the chylomicron. Chylomicron transport the lipid from your diet. You eat fatty food, so the lipid that in your food stuff is digested, but it can reconstitute in your intestine, get transported in your bloodstream to different tissue where fat get delivered. Just like a delivery man taking food stuff and deliver to different doors, okay? So you transport cholesterol from the diet. That's the chylomicron. So the next one is called the VLDL, very low density lipoproteins, transport fat from the liver. If you recall, we said if you're on a high carbohydrate diet or protein diet, you can still get fat because you do synthesize fat from those carbon skeleton, either from the sugar that you heat in I excess or from the protein you eat in I excess. They get transformed in your liver, your amino acid and the sugar molecule get transformed into fat, and that fat has to be transported to different tissues, either to fat tissues to be deposited or to tissues for foodstuff or cholesterol to serogenic cells, okay? So those two are very, very important. Keep that in mind. And LDL, or intermediate density, is between the VLDL and the LDL. So basically, VLDL, at the end of the day, will end up becoming what's called the LDL. Just to put that in mind, the VLDL get transformed later become an LDL. LDL has to be taken. We're going to talk about that. But now the HDL, on the other hand, I'm sure you all heard about that. It's called the good cholesterol because he's a cleaning guy. He goes around, clean free cholesterol that is around, take them to different tissues. Take them to the liver so they can be, or pass it to LDL so LDL can be passed to tissue that need cholesterol, okay? All right, so if you look at it, this is the general structure here. Now, the outside, you have a phospholipid. This is a monolayer now. You don't have the bilayer just like you have the membrane, so you have a monolayer. So you have a head groups here, and the tails, hydrophobic tails are inside. Now, these are your triacylglycerol and cholesterol ester in the core of the lipoproteins. So here you have your phospholipids. Now, you also have what's called the apolipoproteins. So each lipoprotein have a specific proteins in them, and we're going to talk about them in detail. So the reason I'm pointing out because they are very important. They are recognizing molecules, and they can interact with the different things for the lipoprotein to be recognized. Okay, so it's rich in cholesterol, but also rich in the triacylglycerol. Now these are the free cholesterol. Now is sticking in the membrane. Okay, so cholesterol ester is inside, but the free cholesterol, because of the OH group, if you recall, that OH group is sticking outside because it's hydrophilic, but the remaining hydrophobic core is sticking in the membranes here, okay? So you keep that in mind. The free cholesterol is at the membrane, the cholesterol ester is inside or in the core of the lipoproteins. Right? And then that's true for all of them. Now, the lipoprotein can be classified depending on the size, and the size depends on the lipid content and so forth. So if you look at it, you have the largest one. Which one is the largest one here? The chylomicron, right? Which transports fat from your diet. Now, it's the largest one, very rich in triacylglycerol, okay? So it's a larger, but it's the least dense one, okay? Because it contains a lot of fat, and fat is not that dense compared to proteins and water, for instance, okay? So it's the least dense one. Now, as the size decreases, which means the protein contents increase, the density start increasing, okay? So the density and the size go in opposite direction. Is that clear? Because when they had a lot of lipids and it became less dense. That's why the name, this is the least dense. You have a very low density lipoprotein, low density lipoprotein, and high density, okay? So it goes down as the size decreases. So here, this is much richer in triacylglycerol. This is much richer in the proteins, okay? So the chylomicron, the very first one, if you recall, transport fat from your diet, okay? So after a nice fatty meal, those triacylglycerol that you get from either from animal fat or from the vegetable oils and so forth get digested, okay? So they get digested, but once they get absorbed, they get reconstituted in the intestinal cells, okay? Lining cells in your intestine. They get reconstituted to triacylglycerol, now collected in this large balloon here, are called the chylomicron. So this is your nascent chylomicron, okay? Now, the intestinal cells also produce the proteins called ApoB48. The ApoB48 is incorporated in the chylomicron, and this is very, very important. If the ApoB48 is now synthesized and incorporated, the chylomicron will not be able to be synthesized or will not be able to be released in your bloodstream. So keep that in mind, and that's why I put that in here. The ApoB100 has to be expressed in a good amount, so the chylomicron is synthesized and get excreted out to the lymph system, now travel through the lymph system into the blood, okay? So once you get to the blood, the chylomicron will receive two other proteins, okay? The ApoC2 and ApoE from the HDL, okay? The good cholesterol you call the HDL, don't give them two additional proteins. So not only has ApoB148, it also has the ApoC2 and ApoE. So now the chylomicron is now fully ready to start circulating in your bloodstream all the way to the capillaries for the delivery now. Okay, now it's ready to deliver fat and cholesterol that you have taken in your diet, delivered to different tissue for utilization. Give me an example of tissue, for instance, that need the fat for energy, your muscle, right? Now, when the muscle say, I have enough, what else take the fat? Your fat cells. Does that make sense? All right. So now the chylomicron go to your bloodstream all the way to capillary, to muscle tissues, to your fat cells. Now there is a protein called lipoprotein lipase that is lining in the capillaries, blood vessels, lining in there. So that enzyme, by name, the lipases are enzymes that cleave fatty acids off, triacylglycerol. Okay, keep that in mind. So once the chylomicron reach these enzyme inside the capillaries, there is an interaction of ApoC2 with the enzyme. Then when that occurs, the enzyme becomes active. So the lipoprotein now is active, then start cleaving fatty acids off the triacylglycerol that is inside the chylomicron. And those fatty acids are then taken inside the cells and then get utilized. Either they get utilized for energy or they get utilized for, reconstruct triacylglycerol in the fat cells so they can be laid on there. Now, the glycerol backbone, you recall the triacylglycerol has a glycerol backbone? That glycerol backbone can circulate in the bloodstream all the way to the liver. And what is the fate of that glycerol? Either get utilized in glycolysis or get utilized in the gluconeogenesis. So keep that in mind. Now, these things are integrated, so that's what I want you to see as we go. Each time we'll talk about something that you already said. So once that occurs, so the chylomicron body then become a little less, okay? So when it becomes a little less, so it's called the chylomicron ruminant. But before that, before it reach that level, it passes the ApoC2 back to the HDL. Tell the HDL, you've been kind to me, but here is back your ApoC2. I've been able already to activate the lipoprotein lipase. So ApoC2 is passed back onto the HDL. Now you have your remnant chylomicron. ApoE remain, and that ApoE is then, along with the remaining of the chylomicron and the ApoB4, are taken back to the liver. But remember, when you eat, you're also taking the cholesterol, but it turns out the chylomicron ruminant is very rich in cholesterol. So, and that's why I say cholesterol ester, and they are taken back by the liver. Okay, but the interaction occurs through the ApoE receptor. Okay, all right. So now, that's okay. Now the VLDL. Okay, that's the next one. So what is the role of VLDL? Transport fat from that is synthesized in your liver. Keep those things in mind. It's very, very important because chylomicron fat from your diet, VLDL fat from that you have synthesized in your liver, okay, from sugars and so forth. All right. Just the same way, it turns out the VLDL is synthesized in the liver, okay? Triacylglycerol synthesized, cholesterol synthesized in the liver. They have to reconstitute back in forms of transport mechanism. But now there is what's called the VLDL. The nascent VLDL receive ApoB100 from the liver cells, okay? This ApoB100 is very important. So far at the beginning, it's the only one there, okay? And just like the ApoB48 was on the chylomicron, he received the ApoB100 from your liver, okay? Now you move on to the bloodstream. Now you receive ApoC2 and ApoE, just like the chylomicron did. You receive those from an HDL. So not only has the ApoB100, but you also 2 additional protein in the surface, okay? Now the VLDL now starts circulating through the bloodstream. Exactly the same way, transported fat from the liver now start delivering to different tissues, okay? Now, if your muscle cells are full, so the fat can be geared back to all the way to the fat cell where they get taken and get storage for you for rainy days, okay? So at that point, then the LDL, the VLDL then decrease size, okay? Now, when he comes back, what he does is to pass both the ApoC2 and the ApoE back to HDL. You remember, only ApoC2 was passed back to the HDL by the chylomagnon, right? But here, he passed both of them back to the HDL. Now, the remaining molecule now become what's called LDL. But there is additional step. We're going to talk about it in a few next slide, okay? But for now, just consider once the size decrease become ideal, and the ideal, as you recall, the intermediary lipoprotein, it passed the ApoC2 and ApoE and then become what's called the LDL. But now there is other step before that, so just keep that in mind. Now the LDL is now taken, because it's rich in cholesterol, so it's taken by different cell tissues, muscle for cholesterol need, or steroidogenic hormone, steroidogenic tissues for cholesterol needs, and so forth. Okay. Now, when those tissues do not need it anymore, so the remaining LDL gets shipped back to the liver. At that point, there is an interaction between the ApoB100 and the receptor. Now the LDL is taken back to the liver. Okay. Now, once you reach the liver, then you get degraded. Okay. Every components get degraded. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk about it a little more in detail. Okay. All right. So now this is the exchange. Okay. I want you to. That's what I was saying. The LDL, before it gets formed, the VLDL that is there has to do some kind of exchange. Okay? If you recall, the VLDL go through a series of interaction before it becomes the full LDL. That's what we're talking about here. So the VLDL that is rich in triacyl glycerol from the liver, then come and find the HDL. Remember, the HDL has been collecting cholesterols from different tissues, cholesterol-free cholesterol that are no longer needed. So he does the cleaning up. Okay? And we're going to get to a little more, but for now, just keep in mind, the HDL is the guy who goes around, collect all the free cholesterol that are fully around or from different cells and take them so they won't be laid down around. They have to be taken back to the liver or get reutilized. So what happened, those cholesterol ester from HDL, some of them are transported to the VLDL. Now, in return, the VLDL will give a little bit of the triacyl glycerol to the HDL. So this is what's called the exchange, which is catalyzed by this specific enzyme here, the cholesterol ester transfer protein. And there's a specific role for that. So HDL, after collecting those cholesterols around, that are no longer needed, they need to be recycled. He passed those cholesterol to VLDL. You remember the VLDL is, in forms of LDL is taken by extracellular tissues, right? Extra hepatic tissues. So what happened when he exchanged some cholesterol ester to this guy? So when he gets taken by these tissues, those cholesterol ester will be available to those tissues. Okay. Now, once the VLDL give up the ApoC2 and ApoE, then it becomes completely fully forms LDL, okay, which is taken by the extracellular tissue, hepatic tissues, or it can go back to the liver. Is that clear? So this is how the LDL get extra cholesterol. They get it from the HDL. The HDL have taken those cholesterol from other tissues where those cholesterol was already utilized. Now they're free in order to clean them up. Is that clear? Good. All right. So this is the LDL's lipid content. As you look at it, the LDL, compared to the others, has the highest concentration of the cholesterol ester, okay? HDL, even though it go collect around, but remember, he passed those cholesterol ester to LDL. So LDL becomes very rich in cholesterol ester, okay? And that's important. So it also has this ApoB100 in the surface, which help him to be taken by the liver cells, and then all those cholesterol ester that is not utilized by other tissues are now shipped back to the hepatic cells so they can process it and then and either utilize them or store them for them. Okay? And so these are the lipid contents that you can read it on. But as I said earlier, chylomicron has the highest concentration of the triacylglycerol. Okay. All right. So this is the LDL uptake. This is very, very important because it's associated with disease. The LDL lipoprotein has a now rich in cholesterol. You know that, right? I show a lot of cholesterol ester. So it's very rich in cholesterol. Now it has been going around delivering cholesterol to different tissues. Now, no other tissue wanted it, so it has to be taken back by the liver. Okay? So liver is a nice guy. So what happened, it come along and interact with a specific area, called a pit, with the cluttering molecules here, and then with the receptors pointing in the cell surface. So the LDL, as you see, rich in cholesterol ester, those reddish stuff are cholesterol ester. Now the whole thing again, endocytes inside the, and this endosome is formed. So you have a vesicle invagination with the LDLs inside. But one thing you have to remember, the receptor gets recycled back to the cell surface, so it's not going to get degraded. But the entire endosome, fused with the lysosome, which contains a lot of enzymes and stuff and acid, so it gets degraded. Everything else gets degraded, okay, including proteins in the surface, the LDL. So when that occurs, you remember the ApoB100 in the surface, they get degraded to amino acids, the fatty acids, and the triacylglycerol get degraded to triacylglycerol get degraded to fatty acid. Now the cholesterol, the free cholesterol now are now available. Either they get reutilized, repackaged, and sent out, or they get storage. Okay, but in order to be stored, they have to be esterified. Okay. Now we're going to talk about the cholesterol, and then we're going to come back to this slide that I just got out of the way, and then we'll go over a little more. So the cholesterol homeostasis. All right. So this is your chemical cholesterol. If you recall, 4 rings and the OH. This is why it has to be esterified. Talk about cholesterol. So if it's not esterified, this is slightly hydrophilic, so it has to be stick in the membrane if it's not esterified. And if it's esterified, then it can be inside the LDL or the lipoproteins. So cholesterol is important for membrane synthesis, stereosynthesis, by acid synthesis. If you recall, we mentioned all that in the chemistry, lipid chemistry. So it is important, all those biological molecules, okay? Bile salts, steroid hormones, or vitamins, and the membrane synthesis, okay? So it turns out most cells obtain the LDL, HDL, cholesterol from these molecules. Either you get they get new cholesterol gets synthesized. In many cases, you have enough cholesterol coming from your diet, but if not, your body can synthesize new cholesterol, okay? This is what we talk about, the noble synthesis, and it occurs in the liver, mainly. All right, so this is the cascade for the synthesis. The cholesterol synthesized from acetyl-CoA. You should know acetyl-CoA by now, right? It says so much about it. So acetyl-CoA, you have a set of acetyl-CoA combined. At the end of the day, you have your steroid cholesterol synthesis here, okay? And then steroid hormones, or, steroid hormones or vitamins, some vitamins, that cholesterol beta also get synthesized after that. But I'm not asking you to remember all this cascade. This is where, this is the rate determining step, the HMG-CoA reductase. It's the rate limited step, it's a committed step. So once the molecule goes through this, it has to become cholesterol. So this is highly regulated, and this is what we're going to talk about, okay? So keep your focus on that one, okay? So HMG-CoA reductase is an enzyme that transforms HMG-CoA to mevalonate and then proceed through the rest of the cascade. And this enzyme is highly regulated. It's stimulated by insulin stimulates synthesis. Insulin in general kind of in the fat synthesis, usually insulin stimulates them. And glucagon now opposed to this enzyme, okay, as you see here. But statin is a drug, you probably heard of statin, right? If somebody has a cholesterol problem, so now your body has a lot of cholesterol, probably you're taking a lot of cholesterol in your diet, so they give you statin to try to block this enzyme so you do not synthesize additional cholesterol on top of what you already have, either on your diet or storage in your liver, all right? So statin worked out. But it turns out when you block the enzyme, so any other molecule that is synthesized below here will not be synthesized. And one of them is a coenzyme Q that is used, that is in what cascade? Coenzyme Q. Yeah, in the electron transport chain, right? Good. So if you're taking statin, you have to be careful because when it shut down these cascades, the coenzyme Q synthesis is impaired, and that can lead to deficiency in ATP. So the person taking this, so don't be surprised somebody who's on this become lethargic because it's not been able to synthesize enough ATP through the electron transport chain. Is that clear? All right. So now back to the cascade. So hepatocytes, as I said, hepatocytes do get the cholesterol from all these, LDLs and HDL, because they all get taken in. Okay? And this is the real limitation. This is what we were just discussing. And this cascade is very important. It's inside the liver cell. So now, once you have a lot of cholesterol from your diet or collecting from other and it gets storage in the liver cell hepatocyte, the cholesterol, the extra cholesterol ester will shut down the HMG-CoA activity. Okay? So cholesterol will shut down the new cholesterol synthesis. Is that clear? All right. But in addition, one other thing is it will inhibit the synthesis of the receptor. Okay? So the HMG, not only it will shut down the HMG-CoA activity, but it also shut down the expression of the HMG-CoA, but it also stimulates the degradation of HMG-CoA, okay, which is fine. But the things that you do not want, it will inhibit the LDL receptor. If you have high cholesterol, it will downregulate the expression of the LDL receptor. What is the role of LDL receptor? You interact with the LDL, and LDL is taken inside. You remember LDL is full of cholesterol. So now, if you shut down the LDL receptor expression, what happened? You have less expression, less receptor in the cell surface. If that occurs, what happened? Would you be able to take in LDLs in? You will not be able, right? If that occurs, so LDL will accumulate in the blood. When LDL accumulates in the blood, that's a bad thing, okay? So that's what leads to atherosclerosis, because the cholesterol, the LDL get oxidized, and then macrophages come, garbage, and all those things associated. And there is a plaque formation in your blood vessel, and that's something you do not want. We're going to talk about a little more, in next year. But for now, this is what I want you to keep in mind. If any reason for, you have downregulation or lack of expression of the, or if it's expressed is now functional, of the LDL receptor, so the person is in trouble, okay? Is that clear? So far, that's where we're going to stop on that one. So LDL receptor is important. It has to be expressed, okay? I know there are diseases associated with that. We're going to talk about this next year. All right, so next one is HDL. So much been said about it, but, let's get on it now. So the HDL has a different function, okay? One of them, you already seen it, is the reservoir for ApoC2 and ApoE. If you recall, you pass ApoC2 and ApoE2, chylomicron ND, VLDL, right? Okay, that's its main function for that one. Now, the next function, it goes around and collects free cholesterol. First of all, the HDL is synthesized as proteins, the ApoA1. So basically, it's just like this from your liver. Liver will give you some phospholipids, some cholesterol acid. But once it gets synthesized this way, the HDL now goes around and now accepting more cholesterol from tissues. As I said, tissues have a steroid bias, hormones, and vitamins, and so forth. So when they're no longer needed, the free cholesterol has to be taken outside of the cell and pass it on to the HDL. So HDL can then collect them and take them, to dispose of them, okay? So free cholesterol, as I said, that is now utilized or no longer needed, has to be released from outside the cell. And that's very important. So keep your eyes on these proteins here, the ABCA1 cassette, they call it. This protein is very important. We're going to talk about a little more down, a few slides down. This protein is very much important for the cholesterol to exit the cells, okay, in order to be collected by the HDL. So if you have mutation on this, you will not be able to free the cholesterol, taking the free cholesterol from the cell. So now once the cholesterol are taken outside, now they get esterified, the free get esterified. Now there is a specific protein that catalyzes the esterification called the LCAT, the L-lecithin cholesterol acyl cholesterol transferase protein enzyme called the LCAT, okay? Basically, it is a transferase, okay? So what that LCAT does is to take the free cholesterol and take a fatty acid from these phospholipids and pass it on to the cholesterol, and you have your cholesterol ester. And that cholesterol ester is now packed inside the lipoprotein. Is that clear? Because it cannot be packed inside until it's esterified. You remember that? Because free cholesterol, if it's not esterified, it cannot be inside. Why? Because of the OH group, you remember? So it has to be esterified so it can become completely hydrophobic and take it inside completely. Now, you have your H3. Now, the H3 can then go and accept furthermore more cholesterol ester. Now, and then become what's called the H2. Okay? Now, it turns out the presence of ApoB-A1 is a stimulant for the enzymes, the LCAT enzyme. So more ApoA1 you have around, the LCAT become much more active to acidify more cholesterol so they can be taken inside the HDL. So you remember this process, once the HDL has a lot of cholesterol inside, it come along and ask the LDL, can you help me? And I'll help you take some of your lipid if you accept to take some of the cholesterol ester that I have so you can pass it on to other tissues that need it, okay? So now the HDL count, HDL2, then pass some cholesterol ester to a VLDL, and the VLDL will give him some of the triacylglycerol. So you have exchange, okay? So when that occurs, the VLDL become rich in a cholesterol ester. As you see, the red portion represents the cholesterol ester is much larger after you have this interaction. So now that VLDL can go with the cholesterol ester and then deliver to tissues that now need it. If no other tissues need it, then it go straight up to the liver and be taken by the liver. If you recall, I said you need the LDL receptor in order the LDL to be taken. So the receptor in the cell surface interact with the ApoB100. If you recall, the ApoB100 is the protein that is recognize this receptor and get interacted. Now, about the ApoC2 and the ApoE, where are they? You remember the VLDL initially have accepted ApoC2 and ApoE from HDL. Where are they? You remember they get returned back to HDL. You remember that? Yeah, a few slides back. So it's the same thing we said earlier. Once you accept all those molecules and exchange and become cholesterol, it will pass it on the ApoC2 and ApoE back to the HDL. Now only ApoB100 it remain on the VLDL, now converted to LDL, and the LDL now get taken by the liver and then get degraded. Okay, naturally you need your receptor there. Okay, so if you don't have a receptor, what happens? If you don't have the receptor, LDL receptor, what happens? It accumulates in the blood, and when it accumulates, it oxidizes, and plaque formation occurs. You heard about atherosclerosis? Good. So, start putting yourself in that mood now. Once things occur, I will lead it to something that you already mentioned, so you can connect those dots. Okay? Is this clear? Good. So the esterification, I mentioned that, and then the two esterification. So ApoB100, ApoA1 is activator of the LCAT in both cases. Okay. All right. So now the fourth role of the HDL reverse cholesterol. Initially, say it goes around, take a cholesterol from tissue, right? Pass it on to LDL, but also go to the liver and pass some more in there to the liver. Sorry. You see? So when the HDL collects free cholesterol from tissues, now you have a high level of cholesterol ester. Some is given to LDL, but the VLDL, but some remain inside. And those, it can go around and pass some of those cholesterol to spirogenic tissues, for instance, okay, adrenal cortex and Leydig cells and so forth, for those tissues that synthesize steroid hormones and so forth, okay? But if those needs are already satisfied, so the HDL can go straight up to the liver, but sometimes the HDL doesn't have to be taken by the liver. There is specific enzymes on the surface that can cleave off the cholesterol ester and take them straight up inside the liver. But it could be taken also by the liver, and it can interact with the liver and get invaginated, take it inside, and then get degraded. Okay? But in many cases, it just gets empty of its content outside the liver, so he can go around and collect more free cholesterol. Does that make sense? All right. And then the liver can now utilize those excess of cholesterol for different purposes. The bile salt, the bile is a cholesterol base, so it can be synthesized by the liver and to be disposed and so forth. So that's one way. Keep in mind, that's one way your body can dispose of the cholesterol. There is no specific way cholesterol get metabolized, degraded. So what your body does is use it as a bile, and then once the bile get dispersed in your intestine, so it go through the digestive system, emulsify the fatty acid, fats and so forth, but it gets excreted out, okay, in the stool. That is the body way to get rid of the excess of cholesterol. Is that clear? Okay. Just give you an example, cholesterol-based hormones, cortisol, estrogen, progesterone, and so forth. All right, so the next one, if you recall the ABCA1 that I mentioned to you, what is the function of ABCA1? Facilitate the exit of the free cholesterol from the cells outside of the cell, right? So they can be collected by the HDL, right? So now you see free cholesterol gets exceeded out the cell by the ABCA1. So now, once they get taken by this HDL S35, and now you'll have your mature HDL. But what I want to bring to your attention here, sometimes you have a mutation on this ABCA1. So when that occurs, the person will not be able to excrete the free cholesterol from your tissues, and that can lead to accumulation of cholesterol in the tissues in excess, okay? So that's why, and that's by definition what's called the Angier disease. The ABCA1 now is defective, as you see here. This is a normal process. Now the ABCA1 is defective, so free cholesterol accumulate in the tissues, okay? So the name of the disease is called the Angier disease, okay? If I ask you a question on that, you'll be able to remember it. All right, so let's move on the familial dyslipidemias. So you have a few of them. One of them is called the hypertriglyceridemia. Basically, the triglycerol level is high. This the disease lead to accumulation of chylomicron. Chylomicron, what is the role of chylomicron? Transport fat from diet, great. All right. So when that occurs, so you have the chylomicron level goes up inside. For some reason, chylomicron level increase. What could be the cause of that? If you're not being able to degrade your chylomicron. If you cannot remember from a few slides back, you can read from here, right there. Can you read it? The cause is the lipoprotein lipase deficiency in most cases. Okay? What is the function of lipoprotein lipase? to degrade the triacylglycerol inside the, the chylomicron so they can be taken by tissues, right? So if this is a deficient, so you will not be able to degrade the triacylglycerol. It's a lipase. And that's the one that occurs in many other cases. But it turns out ApoC2 deficiency also may lead to the hyperchylomicron accumulation in your blood. So this one is autosomal recessive disorder. So basically, the person not being able to clear the chylomicron in the blood. You're taking a lot of food stuff that is fat, contain a lot of fatty acids. Now you're not able to degrade the chylomicron, so the chylomicron level. All right? Now, the type 4, on the other hand, is associated with the accumulation of VLDL. And the VLDL transport fat from what source? VLDL. From your liver, right? So now the serum level of VLDL is higher. This one is due to hyperproduction of the VLDL. Now, the cause is still not clear, but some say it's associated with the increased expression of the ApoB100. But as far as we know, so far we hold on that it just been hyperproduction of VLDL. Is that clear? So it's an autosomal disease, okay? Now, if you have accumulation of the triacylglycerol or chylomicron in forms of VLDL, or triacylglycerol in forms of chylomicron and VLDL, so when that level elevated, so they can now start being infiltrated and then can accumulate in different tissues, can lead to pancreatic disorders, hepatomegalia, of course, the livers, and can also lead to cardiovascular disease, because when they're accumulated, all of them can, when substrate level is increased, it has to go somewhere, right? Something has to happen to it. So these become a substrate, and they can get oxidized, get oxidized, and can form plaques and those stuff. So it can lead to pancreatic disorder, inflammation in the pancreas, and also hepatomegalia because they accumulate in there. And cardiovascular, as I said, they can accumulate in your blood vessels or in your heart cells and so forth, and then cause disorder. Is that clear? Now, type 2 diabetes also has been associated with this, okay, and excessive alcohol consumption. You remember, as alcohol basically can give rise to acetate, can be converted to acetyl-CoA, and acetyl-CoA is the building block for fat, right? Fatty acid, right? So when you're taking a lot of this, so it can lead to triacylglycerol for synthesis. And where does that synthesis occur? Triacylglycerol. When you're taking excess of alcohol. You have to put yourself inside the cell in your body and think all those things, where they can occur. The fat synthesis takes place where? In the liver. You remember? And that's the fat that is transferred in the liver. It's transported by what mechanism? VLDL. You remember that? I know you know this thing, but you have to follow. So that's what happens. So when you take a lot of alcohol, and then that's one way things can occur, and you can have all this disorder because you have increased expression of the VLDL, especially for somebody who already has the issue. When that person taking more of the alcohol can even plunge the person to the disease. Okay? Now back to the question we had earlier. What was the molecular base of familial cholesterolemia? Now we know the disorder. Let's get into the mechanism. What molecule is accumulated at this point? What lipoprotein is accumulated? Hypercholesterolemia. What did we say earlier was accumulated? LDL, right? All right. So what may be the cause by now? The LDL is accumulating. What might be the cause? The receptor. Okay? Is that clear? All right, let's get into it. It's here. So it turns out, if you look at the person, LDL receptor is deficient, either completely or at least partially. Remember, even if you have a partial defect, that can lead to accumulation of LDL in the blood. Okay. So it is called the hypercholesterolemia type 2A, okay? Genetic disorder characterized by elevated LDL, and the deficiency is due to the LDL receptor, okay? But some says it could be due to ApoB100. About 5% says it could be due to ApoB100 defect, 5% case. But mostly due to the LDL receptor, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, the person, if young folks is affected by this disorder, they usually develop the myocardial infarction by age 20 because you have an accumulation of these LDL molecules in your blood, and they can be oxidized, forming plaques and so forth, and then the person is prone to heart disease. And, if you don't be careful, it may have a heart attack as early as 20 years old, okay? And we're going to talk about this, as I said, next year a little more. But for now, this is what we're going to say about the disorder, okay? Now, remember sometimes you see older folks with this ring in their eyes, okay, called the arcus senilis. But to somebody who is younger, if you see this arc, usually it's associated with this disorder, okay? But older folks, because when you're old, everything goes bad, at least in part. But if you see this in young folks, usually it's associated with the disorder, okay? Now, hypercholesterol secondary to type 2 diabetes. What is the one characteristic of diabetes that everybody knows? What happened? Sugar level go. When sugar level goes up, blood sugar higher. Now, everybody has access to sugar, right? And LDL also has access to LDL because they're all in the blood, right? It turns out the LDL cannot bind itself to the sugar can bind to LDL, okay? Normally, the LDL come interact with the receptor, and once that interaction occurs, the LDL is taken inside the liver cell. If you recall that, right? Now, how about if LDL cannot interact with the receptor properly because the size has slightly increased? Does that make sense? So when the size has little increased because all this sugar moiety attached to it, so the LDL can no longer fit the receptor and will not be able to attach correctly and be taken inside. Okay, and this is one possible explanation that is given for the high level of in the type 2 diabetes associated with the hypercholesterolemia. Okay, is this clear? Right. So now beta lipoproteinemia, proteinemia, and hypo-beta lipoproteinemia, basically the same thing. So at that point, this disorder is a rare disorder, but it's associated with the absence of ApoB100 and ApoB48. These two genes, these two proteins are expressed by the same gene, okay? The difference is when the ApoB100 is synthesized, it is a full molecule. But when you synthesize the ApoB48, there is a splicing that occurs, okay? When that splicing occurs, so you have ApoB100, 48, and unspliced one is ApoB100, okay? So when the gene is mutated, so it can affect both of these guys, okay? So now you will have deficiency in the chylomicron, VLDL, and IDL and LDL, okay? Because both of these proteins are needed for, this one is needed for the VLDL synthesis, and this is needed for the chylomicron synthesis, if you recall, okay? So if you don't have this, so you would not have VLDL, you would not have IDL, you would not have LDL, since all of these guys are derived from the VLDL. And the chylomicron is stand by himself, is synthesized in the intestine cell, and it contains the ApoB48. Is that clear? Is that clear? Good. All right, so serum VLDL go down, triglyceride level go down. But one thing you have to remember, you need essential fatty acids in order to, for different biochemical processes. And those essential fatty acids no longer been taken through your diet because you're not going to be able to synthesize chylomicron. So you become deficient in those essential fatty acids, essential because you need them in your diet, right? But also you need vitamins such as those fat-soluble vitamins that need to be taken in your diet. So if the chylomicron is not getting synthesized and they need to be incorporated in order to be taken in, so you will be deficient in those vitamins as well. Okay? So the last one is the ELPA. ELPA is nothing else, is a modified LDL. Okay? The attachment of this new protein, well, it's recently been identified. When it is attached to LDL, so you have what's called ELPA, which is another subclass of the lipoprotein. So LDL plus another protein called ApoA is called the ELPA, okay? So now it's been said, if you have an elevated level of ELPA in your blood, so you are more susceptible to atherosclerosis. Again, possibly by the same system. If a new protein is attached, maybe the interactions with the receptor doesn't occur. There is no specific explanation in the books so far that I know of, but that's one possibility. Basically, the size may increase, if you see what I'm saying. You're adding a new protein to the LDL, which is attaching to the LDL, so LDL surface become much more crowded, okay? And that's one possible explanation. So it will not be able to be taken by the receptor, and then you have an elevated level of ELPA and cholesterol level in your blood, and that can lead to atherosclerosis, cardiovascular diseases, and stroke. But now, this one, I changed a little bit in your slide, so take a look at it. Everything else is there, but I'll just put the factors leading to a high ELPA, okay? So, you know, those are the factors that can lead to this high serum level of ELPA. And these are the factors. The factors are already in your slide. But what I want you to remember is that there is a genetic predisposition. Some people do express a lot of these proteins, then they're bound to the LDL, and then you have an ELPA formation. Okay. So it is a genetic at that point. But also, people who eat a lot of trans fat but low omega-3, so those persons also are prone to a high ELPA. Now, the mechanism, I'm not 100% sure, but the trans fat and the low essential fatty acids, fatty you cannot synthesize, such as omega-3, can also lead to high ELPA. Okay, is that clear? Okay. Look like the last slide. Now, this is a summary of everything that I said the whole time. Now, it's summarized here in a simplified version for you. And I also have this slide here that give you a little bit of summary also. And this is straight up from your USMLE Step 1 book. So, to just summarize things for you in the last few slides. All right, if you don't have any question, thank you. I'm done for now, and I'll talk to you next time. All right, you got 10 minutes?